All right. Good morning, everyone. I think we both did. That's fantastic. Just for everyone's knowledge, we are going to record this webinar so we can post it on our website and folks can access the resources we have. If you participate, obviously you're consenting to participating in the recording, and if you have questions, you can either post them in the chat and we'll answer them at the end, or if you want to verbally ask them at the end, we're happy to take questions. But we're going to run through the whole PowerPoint and webinar, all of our material first, just in case we're going to cover something that you'll ask about. So just to kick us off, I'm Sarah Xenophon, Director of Farm Viability and Natural Resource Division here at the State Conservation Commission, and I'll hand it off to Mike.
Yeah, good morning. My name is Mike Roth. I'm the Director of Innovation here at the PA Department of Ag. So we're going to walk through this resource guide we have to discuss the different aspects of this grant program. So just a quick note up front that this is a federally funded program. So just being aware that things could change throughout the process, given some of the funding challenges that we've had in the past. However, I will say through the first round, things have gone very smoothly, but just want to make folks aware of that. Just a few considerations before folks jump into projects. You need to ensure that the project is located within the most effective basin geography, and we'll show you how to ensure that that's accurate for your project. And then projects also must address water quality, reducing nitrogen, phosphorus, or sediment runoff, in addition to what the Sustainable Ag program is focused on. So most important part is making sure that a grantee is eligible. So there is a link here as well as on the landing page of our website that you can click, put in your address and immediately find out if you are eligible or not based on the layer here that shows the most effective basin regions. Just to give an overview of what this looks like in practice. So we're on step 2 at the current moment with the application window still being open. Those will be collected, reviewed for completeness and general compliance by the staff here at the State Conservation Commission, and then reviewed by our Sustainable Agriculture Board and PDA leadership and governor's office before making the award announcement. Awardees will be contacted and you'll start your contracting process. And then we'll follow through with additional things like invoice reporting templates and other documentation that you will be needed to complete your projects. All these projects will also require certification that the BMPs or the best management practices have been done correctly and are deployed on the ground. So we can get into more detail on that a little bit later. And then lastly, there will be closing documentation, just again, making sure everything is done correctly, as well as just general feedback from your project and successes or challenges thereof. Oh, actually, I will take one step back here. So because this is a federal grant, you do require SAM ID. That's a UEI number, also called UEI number. You can get that through the website sam.gov. This does take some time, so we do encourage folks to apply for this. If you're even thinking about applying for this, doing that sooner rather than later, because again, the lead times can be quite long. You don't need to have it right when you apply, but we would strongly suggest that you apply for it as you apply for the application. So just a quick timeline here. So again, grant application is still open. It'll close on the 28th of August. We'll hope to have staff review in early September. The board will review in late September to early October, and then we'll get all final approvals before making the announcement and doing the contracting process. So as far as applicant eligibility, a few key components here. So the first, again, that this is a farm operation or a nonprofit educational institution, the first sort of filter here. And then want to ensure that the applicant is using the grant funds for an eligible project, and we'll hit on some of the most important pieces of that here in just a moment. And then obviously that the project takes place within the most effective basin region in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. So within this grant, there's two sort of grant types. The first is the State Sustainable Agriculture Grant, which provides grants to more generalized sustainable ag practices, which we'll go over all the different allowable practices here in just a moment. The only difference for alternative crop is that it is focused on the crops themselves being used in a way that supports a BMP. And again, we'll go over that more in just a moment. For both iterations of the grant, it's exactly the same. The grants cannot exceed 25,000, so you can ask up to 25,000 with no match, or you can ask for an additional 25,000, putting you at a $50,000 ask if you match that second half dollar for dollar. And again, we'll go into the math of that a little bit later. So I will turn it over to Sarah.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. So just to give everyone an idea of what practices we're talking about as being eligible for both of these sub kind of grant types that we've just discussed, here's a list. It's certainly not totally exhaustive, but these are some of the main items we think folks should be applying for through the Sustainable Ag Grant. All practices being installed and implemented through this grant need to follow NRCS standards, unless the commission has our own set of standards that could be followed. We have a limited set of practices that we might deviate slightly from NRCS standards and specs, but for the most part, NRCS standards and specs need to be followed. And we kind of make note of those deviations here, like silvopasture, for instance. I'm not going to read through all of these practice types, but if you have questions, if you're a farmer who has an idea about what you want to apply for and it's not on this list, feel free to reach out. We can discuss whether it fits within that water quality objective, or if you have ideas that maybe are listed on here, but you want to explore certain topics more, again, always feel free to reach out. NRCS also has a field operational manual that will talk about these standards using these practice codes that are next to them. And you can look up what they mean and what they involve on your own. But again, if you have questions, you can always reach out to our staff and we can walk you through that. Next slide here, Mike. Just for some considerations, if you're applying for the alternate crop grant as a subtype, again, it's got to meet NRCS specs and standards. But I just wanted to talk about what types of practices might fall under that alternative crop item. So warm season grasses, native grasses, multifunctional riparian buffers. So if you've got a riparian buffer where you're planting tree and nut species that you can harvest from, that's certainly an option. Multi-species cover crops, and sometimes those cover crops could be used for value-added opportunities, for things that aren't forage necessarily, maybe for fuel bedding production or product creation, etc. And then flowering meadows, pollinator strips, anything to support pollinators, transition to perennial grains or crops from those annual row crops. All of these items would reasonably fit underneath the alternative crop grant as a subtype, but you could also apply for these things under the sustainable ag subtype, especially if you're doing a comprehensive project that includes multiple practices. This is just a way to talk about the alternative crop grant as what might be featured there. Eligible project objectives. So this is very important. The funding we are using, the most effective basin funding that we are using to run this program, requires the improvement of water quality. So every single practice, all the eligibility requires for farmers to be reducing nutrient or sediment runoff, nitrogen, phosphorus being primary nutrients of concern, and do at least one of the following. And this is where the sustainability comes into play. It's got to satisfy human fiber needs, food and fiber needs, environmental quality, and the natural resource base upon which the ag economy depends, making efficient use of non-renewable resources and on-farm resources, integrating where appropriate the use of natural biological cycles and controls, sustaining the economy and the economic viability of farm operations, and then enhancing the quality of life for those farmers and their community as a whole. These things are very subjective. So this is to describe your application meeting these criteria. That's where your narrative is really going to play an important part in telling us how is it getting at least one of these additional sustainability objectives. Next slide here, Mike. And then the ranking criteria, so I kind of just described the narrative. You've got to define the project's challenge, the solution you're proposing to solve that challenge, and the importance of this solution for the farm. And again, the narrative can really tell a story about what your project's going to achieve, and all of the water quality benefits and other benefits you're achieving through the project you're requesting. And then the objectives, again, as the last slide described, you need to improve water quality and also achieve at least one of the 5 objectives on the previous slide. Because we're using most effective basin funding, which is federal funding, we do look at the total nitrogen effectiveness score of the catchment that the project is located in. And so if you look at that most effective basin geography, each of the miniature catchments inside of that geography have their own total nitrogen effectiveness score, which is basically describing how much opportunity there is to reduce nutrient runoff in that catchment as its relation to the bay, essentially, the Chesapeake Bay. And then the scope of practices being implemented. This is important to us because while one practice is really great and we want to invest in a single practice, the more you do, the more comprehensive your project is. Taking a systems approach to solving problems on the farm is really important. So we'll give more credit towards farms that are taking a systems approach to implementation. And then itemized budgets, and that's really going to account for whether your practices are installing more annual versus long-term practices. Again, we love investing in cover cropping and no-till, and those annual practices are incredibly important. But you could do it for a year and you may not continue it later. And so if you've got longer term practices or perennial practices that we know are going to last longer than a year, we might give additional points for those. And then obviously the level of match. So if the farmer or another entity is bringing some in-kind match or cash match to the project, that means a lot. We love to see that investment inside of this program. Next, Mike. So eligible expenses. So expenses are slightly different than the practices themselves. Obviously, a practice could have a lot of different expenses inside of it. And so really for this particular program, when a farmer applies, there's really 2 buckets of funding that we're delivering. One is implementation, and you'll see implementation includes the materials, the labor, the work that it takes to install and implement the project. And then contractual and technical assistance, which would be planning. So if the farm doesn't have conservation or nutrient management plans in place, we could pay for those. BMP design and layout, permitting, engineered designs, resource assessment and inventory evaluation for those folks who've worked with NRCS before. They call it an I&E. Essentially, it's them coming to the farm, assessing what resource concerns may be present and how to address those issues using practices that are well studied. Construction oversight and certification. Obviously, if you're building, a new barnyard or something, you might need an engineer or someone to oversee the installation, and then obviously the final certification to ensure it's installed properly. And then project monitoring and establishment costs. This really comes into play for some of those very hands-on projects that maybe take a little more hand-holding to get across the finish line, such as silvopasture, where there's some tree care associated with the long-term success of that practice. We would want to pay for the establishment cost there to ensure the trees stay there in perpetuity or as long as possible. And this section, this technical assistance, is limited to 25% of the total grant request. Okay, next one, Mike. Ineligible expenses. So if you're very familiar with grants or if you've done federal grant making before, obviously you know this, but some standard items that we just cannot pay for using this funding. Any purchase outside of the performance period. So when you've been contracted, we give you a period of performance where you have to complete the work within. Obviously, if you're completing work outside of that period, it's not eligible. In-kind contributions. Obviously, if you're using that to match the program, we're not paying for those. Political contributions, lobbying services. We'll actually have applicants sign a lobbying certificate that Michael described later. So no lobbying here. External grant reimbursement. So if you've got other grants going and you're not reimbursing for those other grants and work. Rent, lease, mortgage payments, property purchases, utility bills, insurance, interest, unpaid taxes or liens, personal computers, tablets or phones, personal vehicles, cars, trucks, ATVs, etc., and fuel. So those are just off the table for this grant. And then I also wanted to dig in a little bit on the ag items. No buying of actual livestock, right? You're not buying a new herd here. You're not buying feed storage or feed for that matter. Veterinary costs, animal feed, supplements, medications, all of those items, and then fertilizer, biostimulants, soil amendments, etc. That's just not something this grant's able to pay for. And then other materials not directly associated with the approved conservation project. That kind of goes without saying. Marketing materials, this is just not the grant for marketing. We do have PDA, Pennsylvania Department of Ag does have other marketing grants that we can point you in the direction of if that's something you're looking for, but for now this grant is not paying for that. Utility infrastructure not associated with the project. So if we're running a water line for cattle to get them off of a stream or something like that, obviously that's attached to a project or a practice, so that's fine, but we can't run, new electricity to a parcel that doesn't have electricity. Solar panels, just not eligible for this work. So if you have questions about any of the items that are on that either the eligible or ineligible list, just reach out. Or if something's not listed there and you have a question about it, reach out. We'd be happy to answer those questions. Technical service providers. So if you haven't been working in the conservation space long, TSP, we use acronyms quite often. Technical service provider is someone who's providing design work, planning work, implementation services on behalf of a grantee or customer. And NRCS has a very clear distinction of who a technical service provider would be, who also provide technical assistance, right, or TA, right? That's another acronym. So TSPs can include individuals who do this work on their own. It could be a private business. It could be a nonprofit who's providing some assistance to a farmer. It could be a public agency like NRCS. If you want to start looking for a TSP, NRCS does have this website. It's a registry of their certified TSPs. If you don't work with a TSP currently, that's one of the best places to start, and you can search by area and by practice too to see who does what. Obviously, if you're already working with an agronomist or a planner or an engineer, you probably already know who you'd like to work with. And then other ways you can find help, technical assistance. Your county conservation district staff are fantastic places to start. Every county except for Philadelphia has a district at this point. And so starting there is a really good position. Many of their staff are trained and experienced and can help with these projects. Obviously, NRCS staff can certify and help you plan and appropriately install these practices. I will say NRCS typically only supports projects that are using their funding. So maybe you already have an EQIP contract or a CSP contract, and then you just want to tack on the sustainable ag funding. That's a great use of the program, but just reaching out to NRCS, you might have to enroll in their programs to get their support. Act 38 nutrient management plan writers. So in the case where a farm needs a plan written, ag E&S plan, manure management plan, all these things that are needed for farms, you could just use the PA plants page. There's a link here to find an Act 38 nutrient management certified planner. Those folks might be overqualified, right, because they're writing nutrient management plans, but they would certainly be able to help you arrange for the writing of a nutrient or a manure management plan if that's what you need. Pennsylvania registered professional engineers. Obviously, if you're using a PE to deliver, a design project, that's bona fide, and we respect that. That's a really good way to go. And then any other qualified person who has appropriate training and expertise and is approved by the State Conservation Commission. So if you're working with some sort of TSP who maybe isn't on any of these lists that we've talked about, please, feel free to reach out to us and check their qualifications, and we can speak with them, get their experience, their background, any other certifications they may hold, and make a judgment on whether they're qualified to certify a project. Next, Mike. This is just a list of the board members we have for the Board of Sustainable Ag. All of these grants will be reviewed by the State Conservation Commission staff initially, just for administration purposes, making sure that all the items are present, that all of the practices being requested are eligible, how much, and arranging, review materials for the board. But then all of the practices, all of the applications will be sent to the board, and the board will make a final decision on whether they want to award funding to each of these projects. And then obviously once the board approves them, they go to PDA leadership, they get their approval, and they go on to the Gov's office for final approval. But really the Sustainable Ag Board is the one making the final assessment on awards. Next. And so that's really all we have for the bulk of the actual program. And I want to hand it off to Mike, who's going to run us through essentially how to apply, just to make sure you all are prepared properly for that portion.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. So in order to apply, you'll go to the landing page for the Sustainable Ag Grant Program, which you can see here. And obviously there's two steps here. There's the addendum and the intake form. So the addendum is where you put most of your project scope and what you'll be doing. And I will bring that up here in just a moment. You'll fill that out. It's just a Word document, and then email it to this email account here. And that's how we'll capture your information about your project. Step 2 is simply a form that you'll fill out digitally online, and I will show you that in just a moment. So starting with the addenda, again, it's a standard Microsoft Word form. You'll fill in all the details here and answer the different questions that are provided. So the first is just your narrative, the who, what, where, when, why of your project. Second is how this project aligns with the program. Most importantly, you want to make sure that you address how does this improve or protect water quality. That's obviously key to the eligibility of this program, as well as one or multiple of the other sections that the program is aimed at addressing. Next, and Sarah had touched on this earlier, we ask that you look up your total nitrogen effectiveness using the map that is linked here. So again, this looks very similar to the eligibility map, but you'll use this link. You'll use your address to find your location, see which MEB region you're within, and you'll see it'll highlight and outline that when you hover over it. And when you click on that, it will show total N effectiveness as one of the criteria. So I'll just jump here. I'm sorry, that's the eligibility tool. I'll show you in just a moment here what that looks like. But jumping to the next question, one of the most important sections here is your budget. So again, your budget is limited to implementation and technical assistance. So you're going to put your vendor name here, a short description of what they're doing. So it could be Tree Planting LLC. A short description could be silvopasture implementation. How much money from the grant that you're requesting to support that. And then again, if applicable to your request, if it's over 25,000, what the match will look like. You'll do the same thing with the technical assistance section. The only stipulation here is that you want to make sure that it's less than or equal to 25% of the total state request. So that is your limitation on technical assistance. So we'll want to see the totals in these blue boxes for both the grand total as well as the total ask from the grant and match in these two white boxes here. Important to note, again, the math can get a little bit complicated. So we do have a little word problem here that walks you through a situation where you're requesting over the 25,000 and how that one-to-one ratio should work. So again, certainly use that as a resource, but if you have any questions, you can definitely reach out to us. Lastly, we have the timeline. So this is not looking for specific dates and times, but more so after you receive your contract, what steps will you take, on a month basis. So maybe within 2 months of getting the contract, you'll start implementation of a BMP. The company you're contracting with will begin that service. And let's say 5 months out from the executed contract, your project will be complete. and then you'll have it reviewed by us. And you can sort of scope out again, this isn't set in stone, but this gives us a sense of how quickly you're looking to deploy your project and how long it might take. So the important thing is that at the end of this, again, make sure you save it somewhere safe and that you can always get back to. But once you have it complete, please email that again to this resource account that we have, and we will connect that to part 2, which is the form that you will fill out. So jumping to the form, again, I will show you here step 2, intake form. You're going to click on this link. It will open up this form. And I'm just going to fill out information as we go so we can get to the second part of the form, but you're going to put your just generic background information here, contact information, location, where you're at within the Commonwealth. One thing, as we noted, we do encourage folks to apply for their UEI number as soon as you think you want to apply for this program. If you don't have it, that's totally fine. You can skip that section. But we do need that to move forward with contracting, so just have that in mind. Another one, the PA vendor number, that's the number that allows you to do business with the Commonwealth. You can get a vendor number at the link below. That usually takes 5 business days to receive, but we have seen some longer lead times depending on how busy they are. So again, that's another one that probably should be, you should get that before or during your application process, but you don't need it for this exact moment. Again, you'll select an entity type, just so we know that. And then the second page here, this is the last page, is really just asking for the similar information to the addenda, but just that we can capture it a little bit better from a data standpoint. So you'll let us know either which one of the types of grants you would like, or it could be both. You'll select all the relevant BMPs that you talked about in your addenda, so you can select multiple of these. You're going to let us know where the project actually will be located in case it is different from the address of your farm. What the total amount of the grant that you're requesting is from the Commonwealth. So you'll put that there. And then if there's anything we didn't capture or other items that you feel are pertinent for us to know about, we would just ask that you note them here in this last section. So with that, you'll hit submit and then you are done. So again, you would address the addenda, fill that out, email it here to this RA account, and then finish the intake form, which is a simple Microsoft form. So with that, I will stop sharing and we can answer any questions if there are any. Any questions?
I don't have any. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
Great. Well, please reach out if you have any additional questions. Our emails and contact information are within the PowerPoint, which is listed on the website on the right-hand side. But really appreciate your time and looking forward to the applications.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you.
All right, Casper, I think we can wrap up the recording and